I was just getting some good information and experience from someone who today everyone I know is expecting to see Hector, and people are starting to come into the room. So I'm going to go ahead and just get started. Thank you very much for joining us for the September desktop time. We are very fortunate this month to have someone like Hector. We're always fortunate to have guests, but Hector, of course, is very much an expert, and he's going to today be demonstrating QuickBooks Desktop to us and giving us kind of an inside look at how that exactly works and what to expect next year. Before we do that, I do want to do a couple of housekeeping items. First of all, I just want to remind everybody that Desktop Time is hosted by QBox. If you're not familiar with QBox, you can check us out at qboxplus.com. This webinar is not related to our product specifically, so we just wanted to mention, though, that we are the sponsor. Also wanted to remind you that you can join us any month that you like, and we do have the recorded version available on the website. That's available after today's webinar. We'll probably have it up by Thursday or Friday, so you can watch that at any time if you like. And also, I'm assuming Hector's going to talk to you about the forums that he's involved with as well. But just to introduce Hector, I'm going to embarrass him a little bit and read his bio that we have on the website. Hector is the CEO of Quick Bookkeeping and Accounting LLC, a full-service accounting firm that specializes in QuickBooks training and consulting based out of Miami, Florida, with clients all over the world. Hector's biggest passion is helping his clients' businesses become more effective through the proper usage and right choice of technology, most specifically accounting systems and integrated solutions. Hector is an advanced QuickBooks Pro advisor in both QuickBooks Online and desktop platforms, which today, of course, we're talking about desktop. And he teaches QuickBooks both locally and nationally with Intuit and in several conferences. I won't go through all the different accolades that Hector has behind his name, but again, most of you, I'm sure, are very familiar with him. It goes without saying that he has a lot of QuickBooks background and is very experienced, and also has a very popular channel on YouTube where he provides his own information. He's also one of the hosts of the Power Hour. So with that, Hector, I'm going to go ahead and turn the floor over to you, and thank you very much again for joining us today.
Thank you, Chris, for that introduction. So one thing I'll tell you is we run a Facebook group that has about 5,000 or 6,000 members. Probably most of you are part of it. And the Facebook group, it's pretty amazing when it comes to folks asking each other technical support questions of QuickBooks Desktop, QuickBooks Online. Some zero people sneak in there, but they don't last too long. But one thing I'll tell you is when we polled people in the past, I've polled people in the past, what is this the preferred way of working with remote clients that work with QuickBooks Desktop. It's between remote desktop, which is the sort of Windows native way of accessing remotely, hosting solutions, use that remote desktop, TeamViewer and QBox. So those three are always on the top three. And really, I think depending on how complex the engagement is, some work better than others. For the most part, in my experience, to talk about QBox for a second, if you're working with a client that's sort of like one user of QuickBooks in a remote location, and you are in your office, and there's really a lot of multi-user type of stuff going on, I think QBox works really, really, really well. Whenever you have a user that never gets off QuickBooks because they have 10 people working and it's impossible to get on a single user, that's when you look at things like remote access and remote desktop. So I know Chris is always very upfront about when QBox is a good solution and when it's not, and is one of the very few vendors that bring that into the open. Most vendors only talk about what their product does, and Chris has been very forthright about that. So I like to give him some props for that, because we recognize that one app cannot solve all the world's problems, and some people like to pretend that. Anyway, so quick plug for QBox, and they didn't pay me to say that. I'm saying that because Chris is a friend of mine as well, like his app. So I'm gonna share my screen, and Chris, I can't see comments, so I guess you will let me know if there is a comment. We'll look for maybe some natural. Yeah, we'll look for some natural spot to stop for comments or questions. Okay, so we'll talk about what's new in QuickBooks Desktop 2018 and kind of understand how these features may affect your accounting process, and then we'll leave it for a few minutes for Q&A. I did this webinar already for QB Power Hour. That's why you see the slides. And it took me an hour and a half. So we're limited to a hard hour, I think. Chris, are we, or can we go longer if we need to?
I think ideally an hour is always the goal, but if we need to go over that. Okay.
Yeah, we'll go as far as we can. There are some features in QuickBooks Enterprise on the mobile scanning solution that may require a little bit more explaining. So if we don't get there, maybe we'll earmark another session for that. Anyway, there's my email and there's my Twitter handle if you want to contact me. Usually pretty good at responding to people. So let's get rid of this slide for a second. So let's finish this one. QuickBooks for Mac. So Intuit surprised us with a new version of QuickBooks for Mac in 2018 because they said that after Mac 2016, it would be discontinued and not supported anymore. And for whatever reason, they had a change in mind on this. Probably public pressure. Mac users and Apple people can be quite persuasive, I think. So I think the peer pressure, they gave into that and they said, you know what, let's go ahead and release a 2019 version. So not a lot of new features that are waiting to 2019 is so they can get support, or so it is compatible with future updates of of the Mac OS system. So they added iCloud document sharing, which is kind of a rival to QBox, which is kind of interesting. See, QBox is not for Mac, only for PC. So I would say Intuit's kind of answer to this, because there was no solution, is we're going to allow iCloud document sharing, which means if you got a person that owns two computers and they have the same iCloud account, you could technically finish working on one, let the iCloud system upload the QuickBooks Mac file to the cloud, and then on the next computer they can open it. And even internally they have a mechanism to let the user know whether or not there's another copy of that file open at the same time. So it's really interesting. I'm almost thinking that they copied this whole technology from QBox. Anyway, they also added the reconciliation discrepancy report that didn't exist in QuickBooks Mac in the past. This is similar to QuickBooks Desktop. We've had reconciliation discrepancy reports in desktop since 2007. So this is a new thing for Mac only, really, for desktop people. This is not new. They added a past due stamp, which was a new feature added in 2018, which basically means that invoices that are past due in terms of the due date of the invoices now print out a little past due tag on it. And also now it keeps track of emails that you sent from QuickBooks. So if you send an estimate, an invoice, a purchase order, all from within QuickBooks Mac, it will have a record of the emails that were sent, something that we've had in QuickBooks Desktop since 2014. So any questions or comments on that, Chris, before we move to Windows?
No questions so far.
Books Desktop?
No questions so far, actually, Hector.
Okay, so let's move to QuickBooks Desktop. Okay, perfect. So we're going to move to QuickBooks Desktop. And when we say the word desktop, what we really say is Windows. It's just that Windows is just not a sexy name, so we just call it QuickBooks Desktop. Although technically QuickBooks Mac is a desktop, but QuickBooks Mac is referred as QuickBooks Mac or QuickBooks for Mac, and all the Windows versions, which is Pro, Premier, Accountant, and Enterprise, are referred to loosely as QuickBooks Desktop, or pretty soon probably QuickBooks Classic. Who knows what the Intuit marketing is going to go with that. So let's talk about the features that were added in 2019 across all versions of QuickBooks Desktop. So any desktop version, any Windows version that's in 2019, Pro, Premier, Accountant, and Enterprise will have these features. In my opinion, there's only really 3 features worth calling a feature, because it is something new. It is something existentially very different than the options that we had before, which is going to be the invoice status tracker, the transfer credit within a customer or job, and the new file condense that can remove the audit trail. Those are the only 3 things I like to call as features. On the enhancement section, we have a little bit of an enhanced check to bill pay workflow. We now can enable inactive inventory items to show up in the inventory evaluation report. And I'll show you an example will make the most sense. The IAM received a little bit of a facelift. IAF files and we don't know whether it did anything. So now the software will give you some feedback saying, yeah, we were able to import some, or we were not able to import some, and that sort of thing. And lastly, they enhanced the sick vacation pay tracking interface. The pay stub itself is very clear about the number of hours that are left after the consumption of sick and vacation pay on the checks. These are for QuickBooks Payroll. And also, the system will warn you if you're using more sick or vacation time than what is in inventory, or what has been accumulated or accrued. Okay, so let's talk about the invoice status tracker. So what you're going to see is inside of each invoice, you're going to see that history button. And the history button will now show you a list of all the things that may or may not have affected that invoice directly or indirectly. So you're going to see things like the creation date of the invoice, information that wasn't really that readily available. So now you can look at an invoice, you can look at the creation date, which is really useful. You can also see when it was emailed to the customer, and it tells you the name of the customer that was emailed. So whenever we put the customer's contact information and their email, it will put their name in there. It will tell you when the invoice was viewed. This means it actually connects to the cloud and has a connection to the cloud and knows when the email is open, and it sends the information back into QuickBooks Desktop to let the user know that the email was in fact open. It tells you when the payment was received and when a deposit was made. So let's take a look at that in the system. So I opened QuickBooks Desktop here. I'm on QuickBooks Enterprise 2019, but as I mentioned earlier, this will work across all the different versions. So for example, you see this invoice that I have open here, and then we have the See History link there. That's new. So that's new for 2019, the little link that's there. And we're going to click on that, and then we get the drop-down box that says, okay, so this is the date the invoice was created. Okay. So then when you send an invoice with this, so if I were to send an email here from here, if I were to use this mechanism here to send the email, and I'll click on send and follow the prompts, put the password, all that stuff. If you're using the built-in mechanism, QuickBooks will now log the fact that today the invoice was sent. So that will now show as part of the history. This is a sample file, so I'm not sure if this is going to, oh, there it is, okay, because I had set it up before. So when you click on See History, you notice here, that it was actually emailed. So you see right here, the invoice was emailed on 9/19/2018. And then if I go ahead and receive a payment, so I'll show you, I'm going to click on Receive Payments, and I'll receive a payment, let's say for $200, and I'll backdate this to, I don't know, a couple months ago, and then I hit Save and Close. Now when I look at the history, I'm also going to have, as part of the records, I wonder if I received it on the correct one. Let me see. This is invoice 1098. Let me check that again. Receive payment, being applied to invoice 1098. Let's put here $200. Okay, I didn't apply it correctly. And we'll backdate this maybe a month or the beginning of the month. Hit Save and Close, and now it should show. All right, so there it is. See, so it says, look, on 9/1, a payment for $200 was received. Now, one thing, I'll tell you what I like and what I don't like. I like this. I hate the fact that I can't click on it. I don't understand why the programmers do these things, halfway. Like what would make sense is that would be a clickable link so I can look at the actual payment. Now, you can still do that. Like if you hit Control-H on the keyboard, you get a transaction history window pop up. And this is not new for 2019, by the way. This has worked forever. You can double click on it and you can look at the invoice. It would be nice, and hopefully the Intuit people listen to me, they would just simply add a little link here and it'll take you straight to the transaction. That would be pretty cool if they could do that, but that's just not available yet. Now, the other interesting part about this is when you actually deposit the money. So I'm going to get completely out of the invoice here for a second. I'm going to go to banking, and then I'm going to click on make deposit. So this is not linked to the invoice in any way. This is an independent payment that we're receiving and depositing. So if I select the payments I'm receiving and I go ahead and deposit them, let's say I'm going to deposit this on the 20th and hit Save and Close. If I go back into that invoice and I click on See History, I'm also going to see how much was deposited and the date. So it does keep this weird link through the link transactions that reports all the way to the invoice level. Again, it would be nice to have a little link there so it clicks and you can go see the transaction. And then here it says partially paid and partially deposited. Now this part here that says viewed, you see that part that says viewed here? That only check off once the invoice it's actually viewed in the email. Now I have to give you a warning because I did some tests here. If you email the invoice to the customer and the customer opens the invoice, there's it's called a tracking GIF. So there's basically a hidden image in the invoice somewhere that loads when the invoice is open. Your customer needs to have HTML turned on, which is like 99% of the customers, but there are some customers that only receive text email. That will not trigger that, by the way. So it's just I tested it, by the way. And the other issue is if you blind carbon copy yourself the invoice, which I do that all the time. I blind carbon copy myself on every invoice to my customers, so I have a record of when I sent it. Not just inside QuickBooks, I have it in my email. So if my customer comes back and says you never emailed it to me, I can forward them the email that I was BCC'd on, and that's my record. That's the way I could prove to the customer that I did send it on the day that I said that I sent it. But anyway, if I open my own copy of it, so if I get BCC'd and I open it, it will show up here as viewed. So I think it's important to know those technical aspects. I mean, this is stuff that you're not going to get from Intuit on the marketing side, just because they don't go through these iterations of testing. But just keep that in mind that it's not perfect from that perspective. Okay, it will happen the same thing with QBO, by the way, same issue with QBO. If you blind carbon copy yourself and you open the invoice, you're effectively doing the same exact issue. So I added and I'll send the slides to Chris so he can email them to you guys. Sorry I didn't attach them earlier. Okay, any questions, Chris? Can we let's nip this one in the bud if there's a question about it.
I don't see any questions so far, Hector. I think you're covering it very well.
Okay. All right. So let's talk about transferring AR credits within a customer. So this was a big pain point. So let me go back here for a second and let me open up my customers. I'm going to open up my customer center here for a second and explain to you what the pain point is. So if you work with jobs, okay, we work with jobs. So let's take a look at a customer that has jobs. Okay, let's take a look at this one. So we look at Brian Cook over here, and notice that Brian Cook has, just to zoom in here, has the customer which has a balance, and then it has 2 jobs with 2 individual balances, right? What happens sometimes, and this happens where a customer effectively overpays on one of the jobs. So I'm going to overpay the kitchen, let's say an extra $2,000, okay? And this can happen. So we go and we receive the payment. So let's go into customers. Let's go to receive payment. And we'll receive a payment of the kitchen. We're going to go ahead and receive an overpayment for this. So again, we're going to receive an overpayment for the kitchen. Let's say that we received 579.33. We apply it to all the current jobs. And then what happens is we have an overpayment or an outstanding credit. Now, normally, when these things happen in this order, where the overpayment happens after I create the invoice, normally at that point, we are probably proactively solving for this, figuring out, hey, why did you overpay me? And figure this out and maybe splitting off the payments as 2 separate payments. But many times it happens where the customer prepays and then you invoice after the fact. Because I mean, job-based, when we work with jobs, it's a lot of projects, a lot of unknowns, a lot of change orders, that sort of thing. A lot of times we get paid in advance and then we go ahead and create the invoices after the fact, and then we realize that we had leftover payment, and then that payment is already deposited and the bank's already reconciled, and we really don't want to touch that payment. But what ends up happening is when we do this, you're going to have one job with an overpayment. So you see it here. We have one job with an overpayment, and then another job with the actual balance. The net balance of the customer, so our AR is correct, but our AR at the job level is not. So one of the things that you couldn't do in QuickBooks in QuickBooks Desktop before 2019 is you couldn't open this. I'm going to go ahead and open an open invoice here. So let me do an open invoice for this job. So let me pick the open invoices here. So that's the open invoice. I couldn't take this open invoice and click here where it says apply credits. I wouldn't see this. This is new. This is brand new. You've never seen this before, or you should not unless you were dreaming. This little box here that says customer job, that box was never available there with information about other jobs. So this box before would only show you overpayments or available credits that were tied within the same job. Now QuickBooks is searching within the customer across all the jobs, and it's allowing you to basically cross them with this tool. Now, what's interesting is what happens behind the scenes. So this looks, it looks like pretty seamless, but it actually is not. I'm going to hit done. So for the user, it's seamless, and then this crazy thing happens, which we've never seen before. We now get a warning message that says, hey, we're doing something that you've never done before. This is a new feature. We're transferring credits across the jobs. Make sure that you understand that we're creating a journal entry. And there's no button, no magic button that can undo this or change this. Understand that we're actually creating a journal entry, and you can only fix it with another journal entry. So that's kind of interesting. I think most end users are just going to say, yeah, whatever, okay, hit yes, and then not worry about it. But accountants are all going to freak out and say, hey, what do you mean by that? So I want to show you exactly what happens behind the scenes, because it is really so important to know. So there is a journal entry. I'm going to hit Control-H on the keyboard so I can see that journal entry. There's a journal entry that gets created by QuickBooks that effectively creates a clearing account. So there's an account here called Account for Credit Transfer. It's an account that's now in my chart of accounts. It's an other current asset, as you can tell here. It's an other current asset right here, and it's inactive. Okay, so notice that it's inactive. QuickBooks creates a new inactive clearing account called Other Current Asset, where effectively sends the payment in and then takes the payment out using a different job on each journal entry. So let me go back to the journal entry again and show you. So you look at this journal entry where accounts receivable is being credited by the $2,000, so effectively zeroing out that accounts receivable of $2,000, and then it's sending it over to the credit transfer. And then if you look at the next journal entry next to it, notice that there's the reverse, but this time around it's applying it to the kitchen job. I'm going to hit back one more time and show you the first one. The first one's taking the overpayment away from the second story addition, so taking it away from the first job, and I'm going to hit next and go to the next journal entry, and notice that now it's putting it back into the new job. Okay, so that's essentially what it's doing. It's moving it from one job to put it. I may have mixed and matched these. So it's taking it away from kitchen and putting it into second story. That's really what I meant to say. It's taking the credit away, zeroing it out, and then pushing the payment into the other job. So hope that wasn't confusing. I mean, that's how they decide to do it. All the journal entries are applied. I mean, if you don't touch it, it'll work just fine. There's going to be one issue, and you're going to see this is actually pretty interesting. And if someone tries to delete this journal entry, I'm going to hit delete for a second. You're also going to see something that you've never seen before. This warning message has never ever been given by QuickBooks before. And I got to tell you, when I saw this, I literally was clapping. And let me tell you what it says. It says, I don't recommend this. You should not delete this transaction. It's going to cause incorrect balances. By the way, that's never happened on a journal entry before where it recommends you not to delete it. It is if you absolutely need to do this, please ensure that it has been verified by an accountant. You know, I got to tell you, when I saw that, I literally clapped. I said, bravo into it. Bravo. Finally, you're telling users that an accountant needs to verify something that you're screwing up. I've never seen this language inside the software before ever, saying that something needs to be verified by an accountant. So for whatever reason, when the programmers were going through this, I'm sure when they were getting feedback, one of the accountants said, make sure you add this warning in there, because it's not like an Intuit, a QuickBooks programmer to make a warning like this. I remember QuickBooks was supposed to be that software that you can do whatever you want and no need for an accountant. Well, this is a new thing from Intuit. So I really liked it. I'm happy for the fact that they did this. Now, they haven't done a really good job of teaching accountants exactly what's going on here. Like you're learning this from me, this whole journal entry fiasco here. But I just think it's neat, and I think it just may be a fun observation to make about it. So maybe I'm trying to make something mundane seem more exciting. I guess just for the sake of making it seem exciting. Anyway, so the third major. Well, let's see, Chris. Is there a question, something pending, so we can address that before we move to the next one?
No, I don't have any questions yet. I have people complimenting what you're saying, so I think everyone's on board with you about having that warning message. Because a lot of times people just want to delete things and say, "Oh, I fixed it," and it causes other repercussions. So,
right. I've never seen a customer fix something through deletion. It's never been, like I've never said. I never had a customer said, I deleted this, I fixed it, and somehow the conversation ended there. That's never happened before. So, yeah. So anyway, so something very interesting that they did, and I'm going to tell you a little bit of insight from this, because I've been working with the development team for about 5 years already, giving them feedback, beta testing, which, by the way, they listen to about 0.5% of what I say. But one of the major feedback that we have been giving them, me as a long-term desktop user, is that sometimes these QuickBooks files get so big that they become really unmanageable, right? Either the computer doesn't know how to manage the resources, or the data gets corrupted, the reports start showing unbalanced balance sheets. I mean, it's getting really bad. And one of the things that they've been working on or trying to fix is just adding more sort of guardrails to the database to make sure that it doesn't become corrupted as easily. And it doesn't seem like they were able to quite release something they were working on, which is to give us a true condensed tool, like a condensed tool that actually works, because the current condensed tool is horrible. By the way, I recommend to never use a regular QuickBooks Condense. Usually it creates more harm than good. But this little featurette, which is a form of the condense that doesn't delete any of the transactions, it only removes the audit trail. I've been testing this, and it's really, really nice. It reduces the file size anywhere between 20% to 40%. In some cases, it's improving significantly the performance of the files, but you lose the audit trail. So you won't know, who changed what when anymore. So up to you whether that's important or not. I know that every person I talk to says, oh, no way, I don't want to lose the audit trail. That's really important. But then they only use it like 0.5% of the time. So I think sometimes you may want to be a bit more objective about how you see this. I know as an accountant, I don't want to lose the audit trail. But if it's between losing the audit trail and having the experience of using QuickBooks so unpleasant because the file is so big and unworkable and corrupted, I think I would do this. So this would effectively delete the entire audit trail and significantly reduce the file size without touching any of the historical transactions. And the other reason why that's important, and I don't, I'm gonna tell you some insights from my practice. So this is not related to the what's new in 2019, but hopefully you'll find these insights useful. One of the things that we do a lot is deal with customers with inventory, and inventory tend to really prop up that file, like beef it up a lot. So one of the major problems we have almost always is that when we need to reduce the file size, we have to delete history. When we delete history, we break open balances. Okay, we break open balances. So it's very costly for us to then have to go back into QuickBooks and import opening balances of customers, of vendors, of inventory. So this is a good patch. I call this a Band-Aid to give you one more year before you have to do an actual condense where you have to re-import the opening balances. It will be nice to see in 2020 a tool that would also do a clean break of all the transactions and post the correct opening balances, which is something that QuickBooks hasn't been able to do yet. Okay, and yes, you could do a backup, and then you can do a backup first, then condense, and then you could always refer the backup to the audit trail. Because I think Andrea is asking whether you can do a backup before. Yes, of course you can do a backup before you do this. Okay, so those are the 3 that I consider new features. The next ones to me are just like little enhancements. And if some of you, if I don't explain it to you, you won't even notice. So there's an enhanced check to bill pay workflow. And let me explain what I mean by that. So let's say, for example, that I have, let me see if I have any open bills here. Let me go into the pay bills here for a second. Okay, so I got open bills for this vendor here called CU Electric, okay? Right? So I'm gonna go ahead and write a check. So I'm gonna hit Control W, write a check. I'm gonna type CU Electric, and this pop-up window comes up. This has always existed, a pop-up window that says, hey, are you sure you wanna write a check because there's open bills? And what they changed, and this is gonna blow your mind because you probably haven't noticed before, they changed the order of these boxes. So these boxes were different. Before it used to say, go to pay bills on the left side. It's kind of funny, like it's not even an improvement. It used to say, go to pay bills on the left side, and it used to say, continue writing check on the right side, and the one that used to be highlighted blue was continue writing check. So now they changed the default option to go to pay bills, which is going to increase the probabilities that the client goes, yeah, okay, whatever, I'll hit the blue button, and it'll pop the pay bills window. So I don't think it's a new feature, it's just a workflow improvement. But the one thing that they did, and this is a home run, which is, and by the way, this should have been there from the beginning, is right here, they automatically put the vendor's name. So it also will increase the probabilities of the client doing it correctly because they're not overwhelmed with like 100 bills in there. It's narrowed down to probably 1 or 2 or 3 bills that are tied to that vendor. So I think that increase in workflow will indeed improve the probabilities of the customer using pay bills instead of write check and screwing up the accounts payable. So that's really it. I give it a thumbs up. I mean, I give it a 10 out of 10. I don't think it's a new feature. I don't think I'm going to have people buy QuickBooks just 19 just because of this. But I think it is a great improvement, and I think it should have been like that from the beginning. Okay. So I showed that. Okay, the next one is, and for anyone that deals with inventory, they're going to appreciate this very, very, very much. The inventory valuation report forever has had one major flaw. And the flaw is that the inventory items that are inactive are excluded from the report. So let me tell you what the problem with this is. So for example, if I'm looking at a balance sheet, okay, and I think accountants would appreciate this more than non-accountants, but I don't know how many non-accountants we have here on the call. I would love to know how many non-accountants are. Chris, count them. If you're not an accountant or a bookkeeper and you're a business owner in this webinar, tell us. I would love to know what that is, what that number is. So anyway, I'm looking at a balance sheet, and I'm kind of moving it here to the left side just so we can have some space on the right side so we can look at the other report. And we're seeing our inventory value is $30,695.72. Okay, so that's just, we're looking at the balance sheet, that's just a number. Is that accurate? Yes or no? We don't know. Traditionally, the way we know is we double click on any of these reports and we get a detail. The thing is that the detail report for inventory is completely unusable. It's got way too many transactions, debits and credits. No one really understands what the heck is going on there. So the next best thing is an inventory valuation report that tells me exactly how it arrived to that number. So that report is going to be on the reports, inventory valuation summary. And when we look at this report, we are hoping, what we're expecting to see, we're expecting to see that the asset value on the report, this total asset value here, it's supposed to match the asset value in the balance sheet, okay? The reason why it doesn't, or it feels like it never has, which doesn't make any sense, it's because this report effectively doesn't show any inventory parts that you have in stock that have been marked inactive. So let me open up the item list, show you some context around that. So let's say, for example, I'm only showing here the active inventory parts. There's only literally 3 inventory parts in here, right? Only 3. If I include the inactive, there's a whole bunch. Okay, so I went in there and I made them inactive. So if you wanted to fix this on any version of QuickBooks before 2018, you would have to open up the screen and you have to literally Okay, I'm gonna wait for the poll to come in because I don't know if the poll shows up at the same time that the screen is being shared. So Chris, you ran the poll?
Yeah, your screen sharing is still showing up, so
Oh,
people
it's
can
still showing? Oh, okay.
participate. Yeah.
Yeah. I guess I'm used to go to webinar that completely takes the screen. Okay.
Yeah, you're good.
So if you're working on QuickBooks 2018 or older, you would have to go through the exercise of making active every single inventory part that effectively has quantity on hand. So you have to go look at this report. You're going to have to go look to see, oh, are there quantity on hands on inactive items? Okay, I have to go in there and I have to make all of these items active. And as I make these items active, then I go back into my inventory valuation report. Let me put these two reports next to each other. I go in there, and then my asset value, it gets closer and closer to what it's supposed to be. So you look at this asset value that's now at 20,000. That's not there quite 30. It's there closer because I only made active a few ones. So the improvement, so that whole long explanation was to explain how we got here. The improvement is this checkbox. That was the whole improvement. A little checkbox that says, show my inactive items. Okay, so if you hit that checkbox and you do show my inactive items, you don't have to manually make the items active in order to make this number match. So that's a huge, I mean, it's from a new feature and improvement standpoint, it was just a checkbox. But from a level of frustration to the amount of QuickBooks consultants that did inventory valuation, it is huge. It's a big, big deal. One thing I tell you is I found a flaw. And again, I emailed the development team and I said, you need to get on this ASAP. This is not even like, it's not acceptable. I found a flaw that checkbox works with inventory items, but it doesn't work with inventory assembly. So for example, if I got an inventory assembly, let me look for an inventory assembly here. I think there's like one inventory assembly on this sample file. If I make this inventory assembly inactive, right? So if I make this one inactive right here, if I make that inactive, it doesn't show up on the report. Actually, hold on a second. I'm gonna go back into that screen for a second because that's also new. But this one doesn't show up on the reports. So this show inactive inventory parts, they failed to see that assembly items are important too. So just keep in mind that on release 1, that's going to be an error. I almost guarantee that release 3 they'll fix it because I let them know, because I'm saying it verbally everywhere that I can. I'm saying there's a huge flaw in the programming, so hopefully somebody will get off their butt and fix this. But this has to be done. This has to be fixed. So just keep in mind that for the time being on release 1 in 2019, you may have to manually look at assemblies that have been marked inactive and manually mark them active. Now, the other piece that kind of prompted when I was doing that, show you, is kind of interesting. This is also new, and it's one of those times that I want to clap for the programmers. If you make an inventory item inactive that has quantity in stock, there's a new warning message. Okay, this is awesome. This is really good. Again, I think that the warning message department of the Intuit developers, those are the real winners in 2019. They really hit out of the park. So whoever was in charge of warning messages, I love this. First time you get a warning saying, hold on, this is stupid, don't do this, right? So finally we get a box that says you shouldn't do it. Now the problem that I see is that they made inactive the default option. They should make cancel the default option, because you just have to be very careful with this. If you make an inventory item inactive, it doesn't show up in your inventory valuation report, and it will not show up in your adjustment report to be able to adjust it. So no matter what, if you got items with quantities, you should zero them out, write them off or whatever before you make them inactive. So that's just a really important piece, because I think most users really can't differentiate between the difference between an item that's active and inactive. Inactive means it's completely outside of your view. And I understand why you would make obsolete items inactive to make sure that the salespeople don't pick it. But if it's worth nothing, write it off, right? I mean, that's more of an internal issue in each of the customer's choice for that. So that's the note that I'm letting people know here, that it's not available in R1. Okay, any questions, Chris, so far?
No, I don't see any questions popping up. I don't know if you saw the answer to the survey. The majority are financial professionals, by the way. We have about only 4 to 8 people that are business owners.
Okay, so special welcome to the business owners. Thank you for uh, putting up with nerdy accountants geeking out about features that work or don't work. It's funny, like when I go to conferences like QuickBooks Connect and Scaling New Heights, all these things are funny and interesting. And when I do these parties, people see me like I'm an alien. You know, so like none of these things are funny or interesting anywhere else, but like QuickBooks conferences or webinars of this nature. And anyway, so enhanced IF import feature. This is interesting, and I got to tell you, I have not tested this in depth enough to tell you what doesn't work well with it, but there's a couple things I like about it. And to geek out for a second, what Intuit did is they created an SDK-based tool. And an SDK-based tool means it is a tool that talks to the sort of the inner workings of the QuickBooks database and does input and output of data through it to emulate what the IIF file import does, but the mechanisms that it uses for error correction are the SDK ones. And the reason why they had to go this route is because they've already programmed error correction in the SDK, but they never programmed error correction in the built-in IIF. So you're going to see when you import an IIF file, and some of you may say, what the heck is an IIF file? I'll explain that in a second because for some of you this is completely irrelevant. But you're going to see a big button that says import IIF. This button will use the new tool, the IIF tool, and it will still, the SDK tool, and then it will have an option at the bottom that says import for me, I'll fix it later. Honestly, there really isn't anything to fix. What this button does is to allow you to import the traditional way. But the new import tool, what it does is when it fails, when it doesn't import a particular line item, it now creates a log. And it says, yeah, we were able to import 100 transactions. 2 of them didn't import because of reasons X, Y, Z, right? The customer didn't match, the item didn't match, the account didn't match. Most of the times, the reason IIF doesn't import is because something in the database doesn't match. So I like this. I like this very much, that you now get an audit. You can get an audit trail of what happened. Before this, every time you did an IIF, you wanted to do a backup because it was pretty much like a box of surprises whether or not the IIF would import and whether it'll import correctly, and there never was an undo button. So Intuit stopped supporting IIF back in 2007, saying, hey, we don't support this. They were actually telling people don't do it, it can corrupt your database. It's not necessarily true, it doesn't corrupt the database, but it does create funny entries. So although IIF has not been supported for 11 years, they did decide to create a sort of enhanced way of importing IIF, and this tool is not done yet, so I suspect that they'll still work on this. So I think IIF is pretty much still alive. And, Chris, run a polling question just for the fun of it, whether people know what an IIF is. Just give them 2 choices. Say yes, and what the hell is that?
Okay.
And this is, yeah, exactly. And this is what the error log looks like. So it's basically like a notepad file that shows you every line that didn't import, and it will tell you what was missing. Okay, it was missing the account, right? Or the account didn't match the database, or this customer already exists, we can't change the customer type, or it's missing the customer job name, whatever it is. It will now give you sort of like, it will show you the inner workings of the IIF, what it looks like, and it will tell you what the error is. So it's I like it. I haven't used it enough to tell you, yeah, I know exactly, like I have enough to tell you that, yeah, this works perfectly, this doesn't work perfectly. But so far, so good. I like the way it's working. One of the major, I would say, game changer things about this is that now you can import IIF in multi-user mode, which is a really, really big deal, because I have a lot of clients that can only go in single user like at 6 o'clock when everyone like logs out, that sort of thing. So So you only had a particular person in a particular time window that can import these IAF files. So now that you got multi-user mode, that helps quite a bit. And like I mentioned earlier, you can skip the new feature, use the traditional. The traditional will still work in single user mode. So, and Chris, just let me know if there are any questions on this. I'm going to keep going.
Okay.
So the next improvement, the sick or vacation time tracking improvement. Again, not really a new feature, more like an improvement. So basically now you get a warning message that says, hey, you're trying to use more vacation time that you had. So for example, this person had 20 hours of sick time. Look at here on the right side. And by consuming 22, it takes it to negative. So it's saying, hey, you really shouldn't give this person more sick time than what they have accrued. So this is what I call a warning message improvement. Again, like I said, the winners of this are the warning message team, right? The warning message team did a great job this year. Something that traditionally we don't give a lot of credit to that team. By the way, I don't know if there's a team for warning messages. That's supposed to be a joke. The other improvement is that the pay stub used to show the pay stub accruing and consumption of sick and vacation pay used to be for the entire year. They never show the current. So now it's a lot clearer for the employee how many vacation hours they consume on this specific time period. So that's huge, by the way, because I know I've had this issue with some of my customers where they had to print a vacation report or something like that, like an accrued report for that item and the consumption of the item to be able to show the employee what they use. So this becomes a lot clearer. I find that most QuickBooks users don't really use that sick or vacation tool. I bet you that if you run a poll, it would be less than 5% will say, yep, we use that tool. Like, I don't think most people just track those things in a spreadsheet. Okay, so other improvements that I'm just going to mention, I'm not going to do too much about, is if you hire Intuit for their backup service, they have a backup service that they charge $10 a month that backs up your entire QuickBooks folder, and also backs up automatically backs up, creates a backup for your QuickBooks file every so often. It now sends you an email notification when there's a failure of the backup. Now that seems like not really an improvement, but I remember clearly dealing with a customer that was paying the $10 a month and had some sort of issue with backing up, something with like the folder permissions or something like that, where the server didn't allow the program to make a backup of the file, and it stopped backing up back in like March in 2017, and then like last year in November, their computer crashed, and they said it's okay, we have automatic backups, and the latest backup we could do is March, and no one knew that the backup wasn't working. So it seems insignificant, but I really don't think it is. I think that's a pretty good improvement. The other thing is that they reduce the number of clicks that you hit when you upgrade from 2018 to 2019. Like it went down from like 6 clicks to like 2 clicks. So I don't know. I mean, it just makes it easier to upgrade your file to 2019. And they have a new assisted company transfer feature. And I haven't tested this yet, but apparently when you go to File and you click on Transfer Company, you insert a USB drive and it downloads an installer of QuickBooks, the files, the attachments, all into like one package. And then you move the USB drive to another computer, you double click the button, and it installs QuickBooks and copies the files into the computer with all the attachments, with everything. So I think that's a pretty cool feature. I haven't tested it yet, but that was added in 2019. And this is what the notification looks like. You will get an email saying that the email wasn't, that the file wasn't backed up. Okay, so let's move on to QuickBooks Enterprise. Chris, just let me know if there's any questions to that. I want to talk about just QuickBooks Enterprise for a second. So something to keep in mind, there was a mid-year update to QuickBooks 2018 that wasn't advertised, that is now being advertised in QuickBooks 2019. So if you're working with 2018 still, you will get these features that you see here. Feature number 1, they added a new purchase order management feature, and we'll see how how much time we have to talk about that. And the ability to receive purchase orders from a mobile device. And also they added 3 Bluetooth scanners that are compatible with any mobile phone to be used as this scanning as a scanning device to use this feature. And they also added a report called the Employee Pay History, where it basically shows you when somebody got a raise. Right? So you want to see exactly when someone got a raise and what the effect of the paychecks have been. So that's a minor one, but I think it's valuable for people that do payroll. Now, the new the new purchase order management system, what it does is it puts all the open purchase orders on this screen, and it allows you to pick and choose who in the warehouse that has a mobile device, like an Android mobile device. I have one in my hand here, and let's see how far we can get with the demo on this until Chris kicks me out on this thing. But we have a mobile device here in my hand, okay, that essentially it's an Android phone that the warehouse guy, let's call it warehouse guy or gal, has in their pocket. And instead of like someone screaming across the warehouse like it usually happens, it says, hey, can you pick up, can you receive order 1 to 3? The QuickBooks user is actually indicating the warehouse personnel which orders to receive. Then the warehouse personnel is going to open up their Android phone, they're going to open up the PO, and they're going to receive it. And they're going to mark it received. So then when it moves on to the QuickBooks side, the QuickBooks person can now convert it into a bill, right? Or receive the inventory. So this is now sort of like a teamwork approach where the people in the warehouse not books use a mobile device to indicate the accounting team what's being received, what's being picked, and then the accounting team is doing the other side. Now, obviously, there's not that many companies that you deal with probably would use a feature like this, but if you have any inventory type companies using QuickBooks Enterprise and they find themselves like screaming or running across the warehouse, giving people pick tickets and instructions on how to do stuff, this should speed up the process a little bit. Now, in terms of the specific barcode scanners you can use with an Android device, you can go 2 options. One, you can get this device called the NC40, which is a Motorola Android device that has a scanner built in. So I'm showing you here to the webcam here. You notice here, I'm blinding you right now with the barcode. So this is a one unit, just all self-contained. This thing is like $1,000 bucks. So if you got some cheaper Androids, $200-$300 Android devices, and you don't want to get $1,000 unit for each of your warehouse people to use this functionality, you can buy one of these Bluetooth scanners, which are around $200 bucks. And then you can have the phone and the Bluetooth scanner. Now, to be honest with you, I don't have any clients using this. And the few that asked me to do it, I completely refused to implement it because I knew it was going to be a disaster. So I think Intuit is just trying to make like a mobile scanning solution work, but they're on the infancy stages. Now, if you got a customer that is going to do this, just let them know, hey, we're experimenting here together, okay? May or may not work. We'll see, right? Make sure that whatever you buy these things from, you can return them in 30 days if it doesn't work. So we'll see how much time I have to actually demo that to show you. And this is the employee pay adjustment report I was talking about earlier, which shows you when there was a change in a rate. You can see it right here. There was a change in rate just because there was a few people trying to figure out when employees got a raise last so they can figure out when the next raise is supposed to be. Now, so let's move on to 2019. So in 2019, they added pack and ship to a feature that was added in 2018, which was called enhanced inventory picking. So we got the ability to pick sales orders from the mobile device and let the warehouse know that the order's been picked. Now you can pick it. You can also send it to packing, and you can also mark it shipped. And if you're using the built-in shipping software like FedEx or UPS, QuickBooks will, in the shipping stage, it will send the weight over to the software so they can calculate shipping, and it will copy and paste the tracking number back into the sales order. That's all new improvements. Again, I'm not a big fan of it just because I feel it's so limited still, but it is a feature worth discussing because it will generate sales. I guarantee you that you will have people calling you and saying, hey, I want to upgrade to QuickBooks Enterprise Platinum because I want that barcode mobile scanning solution, right? And, you know, you can refer them back to this webinar, stand by my words. And I know that the development team will call me tomorrow to ask me why am I saying that, and then I'll give them an earful. I have my own thoughts about this. So I'm waiting until release 3, which will probably be around October or November, to do a full demo of this, because there's also one special feature that they haven't released, which I can't mention, but it was supposed to be a really important feature of the mobile barcode solution that they said it will be released in R3 or R4. So I'm going to wait for that so I can showcase the entire suite of 2019 mobile scanning solutions. And the last one is the payroll or sensitive information indicator on user or role permission. So one of the major, I'm going to skip a couple slides here just so I can talk about this one. One of the major problems that QuickBooks Enterprise has is that whenever you create a user and you limit permissions, there was no way to know whether or not that combination of permissions will still have access for the users to be able to see paychecks. So now what QuickBooks did is, well, they haven't fixed the permission problem. What they did is that they're now adding 2 little asterisks to any permission structure that essentially gives people access to seeing all transactions, including paychecks. So it makes it a little bit easier for the person that's putting the permissions together to decide whether or not I should give this person access to this, because payroll happens to be one of these really, really sensitive things that most people don't want to give random users access to. Okay, so let's talk about the new mobile scanning solution and how the whole workflow plays out. So we're going to have a sales order fulfillment worksheet that this was added in 2018, but now the ability to track pick stage, pack stage, and ship stage, it's all built in here. And this is basically a dashboard of all the open sales orders that are outstanding. And what this is supposed to solve for is for the accounting team or the customer service team to know exactly what's going on with each of the open orders. You know, where is it? Has it been sent for shipping? Has it been sent for packing? Has it been picked? Is it still sitting on the shelf? This is what this is trying to solve for. And they did a pretty good job with this tool. I just think that the barcode stuff doesn't work just as well. And so for 2018, they added pick, and now for 2019, they added pack. So basically, essentially, they're making the assumption that every sale, it goes to 3 stages. 1, a sales order is created. 2, the product is taken from the shelf into, let's say, a table, right? The table for packing. 3 is taken to a place where people box it up and put a packing slip inside of it, seal it, and then finally, once that's finished, they slap a shipping label and send it, right? So it's those 3 stages that now you can track through this tool, and you can work in conjunction with a mobile application to make updates to those changes. So this kind of what it looks like. So you pick the sales order that you want one of the pickers to go pick. You select, this is the picker that I want to do, picker or packer, use the same expression for both. You assign it, and then the person that has the actual scanner in their hand are going to select the purchase order, the sales order. They're going to pick the item that they're picking, and they're going to say, yep, I packed this, it's 8 pounds, done, and effectively telling the shipping team that they're ready to slap a shipping label on it. And if you're using the built-in FedEx, UPS, USPS tool inside QuickBooks, you can print the shipping label right inside QuickBooks and send over the tracking number over to the sales order. And once that's all done, when the accounting team or the people with access to QuickBooks are looking at the sales orders, they can actually see the status of where the sales order is. You know, has it been packed, partially packed, has it been picked, has it been shipped, that sort of thing. And if you're not from the States, a couple of things to make sure we mention is the data file optimization feature, which is the one for the data condense. That's only going to work for the US. The Into a Data Protect feature is only for the US, so that email notification. The enhanced pick, pack, ship, it's only on the US, that's in here, so the Canadians and UK people won't get that. The new sick and vacation update is only available on the US as well. So the Canadian and UK versions are only getting a few of the features, not all of them. So it's top of the hour. We can, if you want to go long, it'll probably take another 20 minutes. I can show the mobile feature real quick, or maybe we can schedule another one to go to do it thoroughly and do.
I'm okay with you keeping going. I mean, we still have a large number of people here that started. So if you want to keep going, Hector, that'd be fantastic.
Okay. All right. Are there any questions so far?
Not so far. I don't have any.
Okay. Can you do a polling or add some color commentary while I'm gonna get some water? I didn't put any water on my desk.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Okay. I'll be right back.
Okay. Okay, so we're queuing up those questions while Hector takes a quick break. We thank all of you for joining us today, and we are going a little bit over. Very much thank you to Hector for doing that, because this is obviously a lot of information to cram into a short amount of time. So thank you very much to Hector for being willing to go over for us. So I'm going to go ahead and turn back over to Hector. Here we go.
Yeah, no problem. Okay. Yeah, and also I strongly, if you've never been to a conference, and you can somehow plan your trip between now and first week of November and afford the $300 or $400 that it costs plus a hotel. I mean, it will cost you a good $2,500 to do this whole trip. It will be an unforgettable experience. I mean, what Intuit does at QB Connect is absolutely amazing. It is truly an indoctrination of QBO. Like it's like a cult over there of they're trying to convince you that it's QBO or else. So for desktop people, it's tough to see that conference as a true education platform, just because they really don't spend any time educating people on technical aspects of QuickBooks Desktop at QB Connect. But the show, the networking opportunities are awesome. I teach a video marketing class there, which has really high ratings for obvious reasons. The trainers that go there are very passionate about what they do. And it's something I recommend checking out. So check out QuickBooks Connect. And if you're not familiar with QB Power Hour, that's a webinar series that I'm involved with. Every other week we do different things. We're doing, tomorrow we're doing QuickBooks Online for real estate. And we have a special guest. We have Seth David. First time in five years that we're doing QB Power Hour that we have a guest of that level of caliber from a technical standpoint. So that should be fun. You can register at qbpower.com. I have my podcast called The Art of Advisory. I have a lot of fun with it. Talk to different people about about advisory, and I have a value pricing class that I sell every quarter or so. Valuepricing.net. Okay, that's it with the plugs of everything. Let's go back into QuickBooks here. So, all right. So first concept here is barcode scanners, and like I think a lot of I literally have this conversation daily with prospects, people that call my office that say, hey, I want to implement barcodes. And they think that this is going to be like a 2-hour thing. It absolutely is not. The word barcode is such a generic term for most people that don't understand what it is. People think that you got a product with a barcode scanner and you scan it and the software magically knows exactly what you want it to do with it. It doesn't really work that way. I think of a barcode scanner as a keyboard. Think of it as a keyboard. Think of it as a tool in which you will tell the computer what is the SKU number or the UPC number instead of typing it by hand. So barcode scanner is not by any means a magical machine that knows exactly what you're trying to do with it. And most people think that a barcode solution is the answer to their inventory problems. Most of the time it's not. So I got this bottle of Purell on my desk that has a barcode. It's the only thing I have with a barcode, I think. So I'm going to use this as an example. So I'm going to create a new inventory item here. And we'll do inventory part. And we'll call this one Purell. Okay. And barcode number, this is where we're going to take our traditional barcode scanner. This is a regular USB barcode scanner. Here, I'm going to blind you here for a second, virtually blind you with it. It's a USB barcode scanner that physically plugs to the computer. This is a Honeywell. This is like $130. They have like Chinese versions of this for like $20. You know, it may last you maybe a couple months. Honeywell, obviously, it's a very well-known brand in here, but it's essentially the same thing. So when you plug the barcode scanner to any PC, you should be able to simply just scan the barcode, and it will pre-fill it here in the barcode area. Now you have to have barcodes turned on, and you have to have the Platinum Edition of QuickBooks for this to function. So let's put that these are $1 a piece, and let's say we sell these for $3 a piece. So now we got the barcodes set up. Now we hit continue. Okay. So essentially what you want barcodes to do is when I'm going to create a purchase order. So I'm going to go to create a purchase order. I'm going to select, I'll select a random vendor here. And usually at the purchase order level, we're not doing any barcodes because it's just very rare that purchase order people do barcodes. Remember, barcodes is usually for warehouse people. So the PO person is going to go ahead and order, let's say, 17 bottles of Purell, right? So they create a purchase order, they put the quantity. At this point, most of the times we're not dealing with barcode. So we just create a purchase order and that's it. Then when we go receive the purchase order, so we go to vendor and go to receive inventory and enter bill or receive items, whichever one, really doesn't matter. We click here on receive items and we select the vendor's name. And we usually get a pop-up that says, hey, would you like to use the open purchase order to receive? And the answer is yes. We hit yes. And then we get this checkbox that tells us, okay, which is the PO you're trying to receive? So I'm going to select the PO that I'm trying to receive, okay? I forget which one it is. I think it's that one. And then there's this little checkbox here that says, I am scanning items. Now, pause for a second. I'm showing you the built-in barcode feature that was added back in 2013. This is not new for 2019. We haven't even gotten there yet. I have to show you the core barcode scanning features so then we can move on to the mobile barcode scanning features because they're actually two different systems. So I'm going to click on this little checkbox that says, I am scanning items. I'll hit OK. Okay, that wasn't it. Let me try the other one. So let me pick the other PO. I'm going to click this one. I click I'm scanning items and hit OK. I notice that the quantity is not pre-filled. Okay, so usually whenever we're receiving a purchase order, the quantity is pre-filled. Right now, there's no quantity being pre-filled. I actually need to now scan the product as it comes in for it to pre-fill it. So every time I scan it, notice that, you know, that little number goes up, right? So I have to click this 17 times to get there. Now, what the barcode solution is supposed to do is that if you're actually scanning product by product, that you're not blindly putting 17 in there, and if you're being shorted, it should show up. So like in this case, I only scanned it 16 times. That's really as many as I should be receiving. That's the true purpose of the barcode, is to prevent the user from manually keying things that the scanner is supposed to replace, right? So we're going to go ahead and hit save and close. And that's traditionally how that works. But I'm going to show you how the mobile solution is supposed to add value to this barcode system. So I'm going to create a sales order here, and I'm going to pick a customer here at random, and I'm going to select the Purell. Okay, now I'm not scanning it because at the sales order level, usually it's a guy in an office, not a guy in a warehouse doing this, so there's no scanning involved. So I'm going to sell 5 of these. Okay, so I created a sales order. I sell 5 of these, and then I'm gonna hit save and close. So normally, what we'll do is we're gonna give instructions to the warehouse person. Hey, you need to ship this product. You need to take it from the shelf and ship the product. So what we do is we go into the new sales order fulfillment center, and this is gonna show me all of my open sales orders. So this particular sales order you see here, it's open just like the other one there. And then the purpose of this tool is to then give instructions to the warehouse person to go pick it, right? So pick it means take it from the shelf and put it in a table, right? Practically, that's what it means. So we're going to click here where it says send for picking. And we can also skip and send for packing if you want to skip a tool. You need something? Okay. So we're going to do send for picking here. and we're going to select the sales order that we're going to pick. We can give instructions to pick less or pick more or pick the exact amount. So at that point, you can modify it if you want to. We can click on next, and then we're going to add a note. So we can say, you know, pack them in brown boxes, right? Whatever you want to do, or pick them from the top shelf, or get him from the, you know, or get the ones that look nice, or get the ones that are half broken, whatever instructions you're sending to the warehouse person, you put it there. And then you pick the picker. Now the picker means if you have multiple people on a mobile device, you know, maybe we have a person that's there in the mornings, a person that's there at night, you can actually pick the picker, and it goes straight into their interface. Like this is I'm a Hector picker, that's me. So it goes there. So then we're going to go to send device. Okay, and then it basically sends the information over to this device. So let me show you how that works. And I'm praying to all the technology gods, see if I can pull this off. I usually can. Technology gods are actually usually on my favor. So I'm going to show you what that looks like. So I'm on the Android device, and something's happening. Give it a second. Okay, all right. So this is what the tool looks like. I'm just gonna go back here to, this is a mobile, this is a Android device. So I'm gonna have a QuickBooks app here. What the heck happened? Yeah. I think I spoke too soon saying that the technology gods are in my favor. So let me see if I can get the sharing tool to work again. So view. And I don't use an Android device. Like I literally had to learn how to share Android device on a computer for the purposes of this demo. And I'm using this free app called Visor that supposedly runs ads, but I haven't seen the ads yet. So anyway, I'm on the Android device. I'm going to open up my QuickBooks desktop application. Okay, it opens up the application. This is what it looks like. You pick. So if you have multiple pickers, the picker will have to choose, you know, who they are. So I'm going to click like login. Let's call it login. So Hector picker is logged in, and he has all the instructions of everything he's supposed to do. So he says, look, two picks were assigned to me. So they open up the pick by clicking on that, and then there's 2 open sales orders that are ready to pick. Notice that there is instructions there. It says right here, pack them in brown boxes. Okay, you see it right there, pack them in brown boxes. So I'm going to click on that. So I'm basically going to click on that, and then it tells you right there, hey, you got 5 Purell to pick. So there's 2 things you can do. You can either select it and manually hit plus or minus, okay? Or that's assuming you don't have a barcode scanner, or you can grab your tool and scan it. See, so notice this doesn't beep, by the way. So I don't know how to make this beep. I don't know how to use this thing. So every time I scan, notice that the quantity picked goes up, right? So basically, this is supposed to be a bit of error proof, so the warehouse person is choosing the right item. If I scan something else, I have anything else with a barcode? Let's see if I have. I don't have anything else with a barcode here. I wish I had one so I can show you, but it gives you an error, and it says that this item is not part of this, and then obviously that's supposed to stop the person from moving forward. So what they do is they can add a note, and they can say, you know, one of them is iffy, right? Whatever it happens to be. Like, you know, maybe tell the customer that I'm not 100% sure if this is going to work, you know, really well, you know, whatever it happens to be. So I'm going to add that note there, and then I'm going to click on pick. So once it's been picked with a note, I'll click on finish, and then I say yes, and then I'm done. So the warehouse person went to the shelf, brought the product down, put it on a table, and told the rest of the team that now the product has been picked. So now we go back into QuickBooks here, and this all happens through the cloud. Like this is all like all web enabled. So the Android device is connected through Wi-Fi and is sending this signal to a service in QuickBooks that is then sending the signal back to QuickBooks. Okay, so when you look at these open sales orders, this is going to change the status. It takes about 5 to 10 minutes or so for it to update. So this is gonna it's gonna say, instead of send for pick, it's gonna say picked. Let me close it and open it again. See if it it shows up this time. Let's go back here. Yeah, sometimes you have to wait for that update. So that update will come in at some point eventually. It will go from send to pick to picked. Let me see if no, it still says send for pick. It's supposed to update. This thing is kind of embarrassing me. Maybe I'm not waiting the proper 5 to 10 minutes that it takes to do so. Meanwhile, it does that. Let me see. Let me refresh this again. Did it work now? Okay, let me see on the picking side. Okay, so there it is. So now notice that it's been updated. Now it says that it's been picked. See that? Now it says that it's been picked. So at that point, the person, I guess, managing the shipping is going to make a decision. On whether or not they're going to invoice it at this point, or if they're going to send it for packing and for shipping. So this picking mechanism was added in 2018. What was added in 2019 is the additional flavors of pack and ship. Okay, so I'm going to update the sales order and open the sales order just so you can see. Once I open the sales order, notice that the sales order says it's been picked. Okay, so that's a big deal. Now we have just a better understanding of what's going on with our sales order. It's been picked. That means it's no longer sitting on a shelf. It's now waiting to be sent to the next status. So once we go back into a dashboard and it says it's been picked, we can now send it to the next status, which is packing. Now, one thing that I hate about this, and this is where me and the developers just bump heads. It's like, how come the person from the phone can send it to packing right away? Like, why does it have to go back into QuickBooks, and the user in QuickBooks has to send it back to packing? That just drives me insane. But there are some companies that may appreciate this workflow where you're going to do all these steps to the process. This is why, folks, this is why I haven't implemented this, because I can't picture my customer clicking 17 times to fulfill an order. So I'm going to click on send to device, hit OK, go back into my magic device here, go back into my home screen where I pick my user, and now I should have an order now for sent for packing. So see, notice that now there's one that says pack. Okay, so now I can click on pack. So now somebody's telling me, hey, you need to go now put that product in a box and put a shipping label on it, or whatever. So the person comes in here. Now they're gonna again do the same thing. They're gonna scan it one more time. This thing is so insane. So we're gonna scan it one more time as we're putting it in the boxes, and we're confirming that we are doing this, that we're putting it in the box. The user's gonna say okay. Then they're gonna create the package. They're gonna say probably gonna weigh it and say this thing is 9 pounds. The dimension, the notes, whatever. And close this thing, and hold on a second, and then we hit done, and now it's been packed, right? So that's the status. It's been packed. So now that it's been packed, we go back into QuickBooks, and we refresh this thing again, and now it's on the packing stage. So now we are seeing here that this order has been now marked as packed. Okay, so you can see it right there. It says packed. If I update my sales order and click on the sales order, now we see that this has a new status, effectively letting me know that the sales order has been packed after it's been picked. And then the user of QuickBooks then makes one more decision, which is, are we ready to ship this? So they go back into the dashboard and send it for mark it as shipped. So once it left the warehouse, it's marked as shipped. One thing that I hate is that you have to mark it shipped from QuickBooks. In my opinion, it should be marked shipped from the mobile device, because why how is the QuickBooks person out in the warehouse going to know that stuff has been shipped? So it's one of the things that just, again, I don't understand where some of this logic comes from some of these people. So so we go back into the sales order, and it should now say shipped. So at that point, once I know it's been shipped, at that point the logical thing is to do what? Convert it to an invoice. So convert it to an invoice because it's been shipped, and then hit save and close. So I think their mind is in the right place around what they're trying to solve for. I just can't picture someone with more than 20 orders a day clicking 20 times to fulfill an order. And that's my criticism of it. But my job is not to turn you off from it. It's more to just give you a fair warning that what the customer's expectation of I'm doing barcodes is going to do in terms of saving them time, it is not. It is essentially making them spend more time, but hopefully increasing accuracy. So I think it's probably a good time to end it at this point and leave it open for a Q&A. What do you think, Chris?
Yeah, I think so. And I appreciate what you're saying. I think you started off even saying that particular functionality isn't really where you think it should be, maybe R2 or R3. It'll be a little bit easier to use, more user-friendly.
Yep.
Because I kind of agree with you, even just the shipping part, that's got to be confusing for someone in the warehouse not knowing if it's been tagged as a ship item and think it would come from the mobile device. So
right.
It seems like great concepts, but a lot of things they still need to work out. But I love your comments about the screens popping up when people try to delete things, because I think there's a lot of people probably wanting to high five you on that.
Right. Virtual high five.
Yeah. All right. So we don't have any other questions that popped up. We answered a couple during, but otherwise, thank you very much, Hector, for your time. And you mentioned you're doing a session with Seth on marketing.
No. Seth is doing is coming in QB Power Hour tomorrow to do QuickBooks Online for real estate.
Okay.
I am teaching video marketing at QuickBooks Connect in November.
Okay, got it. I apologize.
I may have jumbled the things together. So. Okay,
I promise I was listening. So yeah, definitely sign up for the Power Hour. Make sure you don't miss that tomorrow. I mean, between Hector and Seth, that's about as good a brain trust as I know. So
I'm not going to say anything. I'm just going to say, hey, welcome to QB Power Hour. Go.
High five.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Yeah, make sure you join that. And also, I know we mentioned QB Connect. QBox is going to be there this year. In fact, happens to be right in our backyard here, so we're going to be an exhibitor there this year, both on the reseller side and on the main conference. So we're excited to be back again this year. So I look forward to seeing you out here, Hector, as well. Thank you very much again for joining us today. Thank you so much, Hector, for the awesome demonstration and explanation. And we'll look forward to everyone coming back next month. Next month, we're going to have Ledger Sync, and we'll send out more information about that. But thank you very much again to everyone for joining us. Thank you, Hector. And everyone, have a great rest of your day. Take care.